for guest users of industrial websites that force you to use a PO number. I'm a guest user. I don't have a PO number. Things like that. These are little nuances that really crush your conversion numbers. Yeah. These are the things that you've got to focus on. These are the things that you start to identify. And then I roll out a scroll of all of the things and ways that you can improve your customer experience because this is what they want.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. Most manufacturers relate e-commerce as the B2C experience and swiping the credit card for prepaid customers. But digital commerce is more than that, especially in the B2B setting. Also, in most cases, most people relate e-commerce as the engine for generating revenue through net new customers. And they miss the point that digital commerce is about enabling and tailoring the experience for each persona to create the sticky effect that can create a much superior competitive advantage than offered through your brand, product, or pricing. In today's episode, our guest, Novak, shares his insights on enabling self-funded operational plans for industrial manufacturers' digital journey. He also discusses the difference between the B2B and B2C experience and why the B2B experience is completely different with overlaps in user personas and their journeys. Finally, he discusses several other concepts such as the need for different systems in the digital architecture, the implications of poorly functioning PIM, the importance of industrial data points, and how to identify the lowest hanging fruits when executing digital projects. Let me introduce Ken to you. Ken is half digital strategist and half ops accelerator with 20 plus years helping industrial manufacturers and distributors grow revenue and avoid cost with digital. His work at Hatch helps organizations digitally transform cost efficiently by correlating digital investment to financial KPIs. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hey Ken, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Sam. Appreciate the invite.
Okay, I am super excited to have you. I know that you are going to have so powerful stories, especially in the e-commerce space. So I am super excited to dig into all of those. Just to get things off, do you want to start with your personal story and your current focus, Ken?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Sam. All right, so my name is Ken Novak. I'm the owner of an organization called Hatch Quantified. Yeah. Hatch Quantified, at its core, helps organizations associate digital investment to financial KPI. In short, businesses are run on numbers. Investment dollars going towards technologies are ultimately driven to do one of two things: drive top-line revenue or avoid cost, and everything can be calculated.
Okay, amazing. So obviously, it's going to be really interesting to dig into how you do that and how you help your customers. But before we do that, we have one of these standard questions that we ask every single guest, Ken, and that is going to be your perspective on business growth.
All right, so that's a loaded topic, obviously. So maybe if I can, I will give you a little bit of background as to what my career and upbringing has kind of driven towards my focus and perspective on growth. Yeah. So coming up in my collegiate days, I actually got exposed to philosophy and psychology and some of these softer sciences. Yeah. And what I was really compelled and interested by is that the relationship between brand and customer is often driven back to psychological needs and drivers of those customers. So my focus on growth here is that when we talk about a driver such as digital, and that is something that categorically most every industry recognizes that there's opportunities that when we streamline our businesses via technology, more profitable outcomes is a natural byproduct. So my focus on growth is not about the technology, oddly enough, even when we're talking about digital transformation. My focus is actually on people. And when I say focusing your organization around people, I'm talking about three primary sets of stakeholders. Your employees, first and foremost, your customers, and your candidates. And collectively, those three sets of human beings that your brand has as stakeholders, you need to cater your business and your operations to the efficiency of all three of those human populations.
Okay, amazing. So love all of those key figures. And obviously, even in our case, I mean, as you know, we are in the ERP space, and most of the engagements and the problems that we are going to encounter with our customers is probably going to be people related. It's very rarely the technology or the process related. It's always people related. So you touched on a lot of different, things, and there are a lot of different layers to it. So first thing that you mentioned is, your background is more into the psychology side of things, but then as a business, you are doing the financial KPI. And then finally, you touched on a little bit of, people side of things. So do you want to touch maybe with a story? I don't know if you're going to have a story, how these three things are interrelated. When we talk about the brand psychology, obviously that's going to have some driver into your financial KPI, and then you have the operations and people side of things. So do you have any story that you might be able to share?
Yeah, so here I'll start with maybe something a little bit more provocative with a provocative statement. No one cares about strategy. Okay? Nobody cares about strategy unless you can execute it, right? Yeah. So when I talk about why I focus on people, I leverage the expectations of those humans as the way to define your business requirements of where your business needs to go. Okay. And what I've always focused on is taking that external in perspective and then applying those learnings within the business to migrate operations so that they simply mirror the process of your customer, as an example.
All right, so let's execute on this one, right? So since you are going to be focused on the execution, right? So give us an example of how the requirement that is not going to be, let's say, the external in is the term that you have used versus, I don't know what is going to be the comparison here, but may provide an example of the requirement where people, let's say, don't understand this, but I mean, you are going to be doing this more from the external in or from the people focused perspective.
Yep. So maybe let's do this, because I know a lot of your listeners, Sam, they're manufacturers, they're distributors, they're in the industrial space. We talk about terms like e-commerce and digital transformation and all these different buzzwords. And all of these terms really mean a lot of different things to a lot of different people. Right. So when I talk about ways that, and this is also the reason why I want to make sure we talk about these humans and these stakeholders within organizations, because that cuts across everything, right? So one of the ways for industrial manufacturers and distributors to better engage customers, for instance, what I do is I've created a list of over 110 different usability criteria, right? And these criterion are specific for industrial engineers trying to seek and identify industrial products on websites. Now, if you think about what the expectations of these engineers are going into any kind of industrial website, their digital behaviors, their expectations are not set by industrial experiences. Those expectations are set by their B2C experiences. When they are not an engineer and they're a dad or a husband or a brother or a friend, and they're shopping. Those are the experiences that they then take and carry over to their experiences within B2B. Okay. And this is where the rub starts, because a lot of industrial websites do not do a very good job and certainly do not exceed B2C expectations of customers. And that's largely because of a variety of different reasons, one of which could be the complexity of the product, the diversity in a product portfolio, right? Yep. And you can also have different types of buyer personas or user types, if you will. In the industrial space, I've typically there's three primary persona, we'll say, and it would be engineers that spec product for a design of a manufactured good. We would just categorically call design engineers, versus aftermarket maintenance engineers, MRO space, and then a third persona would be procurement. And how you facilitate the experiences of those three different types of people. And now I'm talking, in this part of the conversation, I'm talking specifically around manufacturers, by the way, right? So if I'm a manufacturer, these are three different audience groups, three different people that have three different day-to-day expectations and workflows that they go through and when they're trying to seek and identify product. So having a list of these usability criterion is simply meant to do two things. One, make sure that the engineer has an ability to seek and identify either the product that they came there to buy or the product content support information that they already have. Because those are the two primary reasons why people go to manufacturing websites in the first place. I need to buy a product, or I already have the product. I just need help with it.
So let's talk about the B2C and B2B difference that you mentioned, that, B2B experience is going to be very different, and we all know how B2C experiences work. And I don't know how many the industrial manufacturers are really going to have the digital capabilities or the web capabilities that they are doing the coding and incorporated all of these personas on a website, unless we are talking about very enterprise, companies. The small SMB manufacturers are probably still doing the phone call and very manual ad hoc process of the coding. So when you compare and contrast this with the B2C experience, so I know that you have mentioned that, the personas are going to be very different. You are going to have 5 different roles that are coming to the website, and they all are going to have very different expectations. In case of B2C, the expectation could be same. I don't know. But they are probably going to have the personas as well. So do you want to dig a little deeper into how the industrial versus B2C experience differs?
Yeah, and if I can, maybe let's go a little bit deeper on those 3 different types of personas, because what I think a lot of industrial organizations commonly do is they look at job title and they associate job titles, and certainly in some cases that makes a lot of sense, obviously. But the interesting thing about in B2B, for instance, especially when you're looking at smaller organizations, the person that is doing the spec identification process of which manufacturer's products can go into my design can also be done as the exact same person that is playing the role of procurement. Right? So it's really important to think about when I say persona, think about it in regards to buying behaviors and needs of your customer organizations, as opposed to an individual that has the job title of procurement versus design engineer, right? So that said, looking at those differences between B2B and B2C experiences, right? First of all, start with all of the common expectations. Product content. You can start there, right? A lot of industrial organizations struggle getting product content on their website. And a lot of industrial organizations struggle with that because of a variety of reasons, right? It can be, maybe it's on someone's Excel file on their computer that hasn't been opened in 15 years. I've seen stories where there is boxes of paper in a closet that just hasn't been transcribed digitally. Right? So product content is that is the foundation of any kind of positive experience on industrial websites. You got to get your content right. Obviously in B2C, that you wouldn't have, you wouldn't buy a product if you didn't understand it's the right one for you. B2B, the stakes are higher, right? So product content is one of those, is where everything kind of galvanizes between those experiences. That's a foundation for those. Other things that are foundational would be advanced search capabilities. I like to talk about this because when industrial engineers go to industrial websites, they're there for one or two reasons: to seek and buy a product, or to get help with the product that they already have. Okay, so pause for a second there, because now there's two primary means that engineer can find that part number, because remember, they buy parts, not product families or technologies. They buy parts, right? So the two means that they can find that product that they need to seek on a industrial website is they either navigate through that taxonomy, which can be all over the place. It can be that manufacturer-specific lens and interpretation of the world and the technology they sell, and it can be very different than other places and marketplaces out there, or advanced search. Now, if I have a part number going into a manufacturer's website, and I type in your part number, it better be the exact match that I can just seek and identify. I've heard so many stories from customers and engineers throughout a variety of industries over the course of my career that they go to Google because they can't find it on an industrial website. Well, that is the worst case scenario if I'm a manufacturer, because guess now what happens? As soon as that customer goes back out to Google and looks for one of my part numbers, I'm now up for market share of eyeballs that I shouldn't have had to compete for in the first place. They came to my website at first to find the product, because if every owner of any product expects to be able to go to the manufacturer's website for the most complete, up-to-date product content. So it is critically important to make sure that you've got product content that is easily accessible on your website through both of those two means: product navigation and advanced search. On the product navigation side, one of the struggles, and this is something that you really see focused a lot on B2C organizations. We'll use Amazon as an example. And their taxonomy, product categorization structure, for instance, that is a very liquid type of taxonomy, because there are new devices and technologies being made today that they don't have a home for in their taxonomy, right? So that taxonomy is one component of product navigation, and that is essential to success of a customer. But secondly, and I would actually say is more important than taxonomy, is attribution. The attributes and values are core to any engineer seeking and identifying products, because they are working within an application that has specific parameters. Maybe it's operating temperature. Maybe it's a different environment that has corrosion, right? So these are the types of filters and attributes that they expect and need to remove all of the products that they're not interested in. And that is one of the key takeaways here, is that how industrial engineers want to seek and identify product through product navigation is that we know going in that a lot of these product catalogs of industrial are very diverse and very deep. Most of those products don't fit the need of the customer at that exact moment. You need to make it easy to eliminate the 99.9% of the products in your catalog that they don't care about right now, and you do that most efficiently through the use of attributes. So when we look at those experiences between B2C and B2B organizations and experiences of customers, that's where a lot of the overlap and the expectations really need to be met. But it's more complex in the B2B space, because the level and the depth of attributes, engineering attributes, tied to highly complex engineered products, that's a difficult space. Then you get into some of the global organizations that also have to deal with a little thing called unit of measure. And that is where things can get really, really difficult to manage on the data side of any kind of organization's ability to engage with a customer.
So very interesting. So I am actually going to peel back, a little bit more. I know that you have been referring this as B2C versus B2B and B2B versus sort of industrial. But when we look at the manufacturing industries, I mean, it could be all over the place. There are at least 50,000 manufacturing industries, and some of those manufacturing industries could probably be very similar to B2C if you really look it as from the buyer's behavior, because the parts that they might be selling could be very commoditized, could be very small. So obviously they are not going to have very complex bombs. So when you say, let's say the industrial could be job shop. Some of the smaller job shops that we see in the market, they don't really have any sort of digital capabilities. The way they are going to buy the product, even if their bombs are going to be very complex, they are going to have their vendor network, and in those vendor network, they don't necessarily go to a manufacturer's site. I don't know how many people really go for that, to be honest. Most likely they are doing the calling. So do you want to qualify the story a little bit more in terms of which industries are going to be the right fit for this? Are these the large equipment providers, or who are these industries which are really qualified for the kind of scenario that you are discussing?
So this goes back to one of those definitions that when we started the podcast that I tossed out there as something that has a lot, that is ubiquitously used, but has a variety of connotation and meaning based on who's using it. And that term is e-commerce, right? What's really important in the industrial space is to separate the terms e-commerce from digital commerce, right? And e-commerce is typically, for me anyways, I associate e-commerce with the credit card swipe on a website, right? That is one way to transact digitally between brand and customer. Now, what you're alluding to here, there's different buying behaviors that may not be through a credit card swipe on a website, right, Sam? Yeah. So let's talk about what those other different buying behaviors and channel options might be for a customer to transact. So I talk about digital commerce channels through three lenses. Paid, owned, and earned channels, right? Your paid channels, and I would encourage any manufacturer distributor out there, think in these same three lenses. Your paid channels would be those digital channels where you are paying via click, Google Shopping, or paying via margin in a marketplace, right? Your owned channels are going to be your website, your dealer portals, your extranets, things like that. Your earned channels, and I know this is one of your sweet spots that are near and dear to your heart, Sam, which is the earned channels of ERP integrations and e-procurement, right? And that's where a lot of those back-end transactions are currently happening. So it's really important that we distinguish digital commerce versus e-commerce, because what we're doing is we're broadening out this conversation now to include all of the buying behaviors and needs of those same people that aren't going to go to the manufacturer's website. Guess where they're going to go? They're going to go to their tools, right? And that's where the buying behaviors and decision-making process is necessary. So what's really important is that manufacturers, for instance, are participating when it's right into things like punch-out catalogs. Because what those customers want to do is leverage their tools on their side of the fence, their side of the firewall, so that they can seek and identify the same products instead of going to your website. They want to do it in theirs because that's easier for them.
So very interesting. So obviously you have mentioned three different terms there: paid, owned, and earned. And in my experience, I don't know obviously how many manufacturers are really going to have their ERP to e-commerce integration. I know that in case of earned, you are looking at more of the punch-out integration, and that is probably going to come directly to the ERP. So again, when we look at from the manufacturing lenses, let's say, and I don't know which manufacturer are we talking about. I know that we have spoken about a lot of different manufacturing industries. They could be very of different sizes, right? So let's say, I don't know, if you are able to sort of categorize them in different buckets in terms of where they might be in their journey. Because let's say if you look at some of those smaller to medium-sized manufacturers, they are not going to have as much money or the capital to be able to integrate. And I know that you talk a lot about the self-funded, the operational roadmap. I don't know if I'm using the term right. So maybe you want to touch a little bit more on that. So let's say if I am the manufacturer right now and I may have some of these capabilities, maybe I have a digital presence, maybe I'm getting some traffic from Google,
Mm-hmm.
because of SEO or paid, but I want to go to the next level. But obviously, I'm frightened because I've never invested, let's say, I don't know, $500,000, $1 million in the digital investment. So now I am actually prepping for that path. So you talk a lot about the self-funded operational roadmap. So how would you design that for me? Let's say if I ask you, okay, Ken, help me, how I can create my 5-year business plan where, let's say if I'm investing $1 million today, it's going to pay off. So how would you start?
Yeah. So this is core to what my career has led me to. Okay. And answering that question, Sam, is imperative for anybody in the digital space.
Right.
Why? Every business owner needs to know that,
exactly.
Right? Every business owner no strong business owner is going to hedge, is going to shove all their chips in the middle for something that, fingers crossed, might work.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
What they have to do, and they're going to do, is mitigate risk.
Yep.
And let's be honest. The only way to mitigate risk is by proving yourself. Proving yourself that, look, by eating the elephant, right? That it's a common business analogy that we all think about and have used 500 million times. That's the hard part, is where do you start? Right? And this is where I focus so much of my time on, is just helping organizations. Where can you start that has low risk? So one of the things that I really like to do in order to have self-funded operational roadmaps of transformation, you've got to start small, and you've got to start with an acknowledgement. We're not going to rip out and replace anything.
Okay.
Because we've already made these investments. And when we talk about digital, we've got 3 different sets of operational roadmaps or operational headwinds. People, process, and technology. And every organization has different levels of fidelity or maturity in all 3 of those lenses, right? So going through this process of developing a self-funding roadmap has to start, not surprisingly, where I start, through the lens of your customer. Where are you failing them? Where are you missing opportunity to monetize your existing traffic just because your checkout process is broke? Everything is showing out of stock. Or I've seen experiences in checkout for guest users of industrial websites that force you to use a PO number. I'm a guest user. I don't have a PO number. Things like that. These are little nuances that really crush your conversion numbers. Yeah. These are the things that you've got to focus on. These are the things that you start to identify. And then I roll out a scroll of all of the things and ways that you can improve your customer experience, because this is what they want, right? But then it's the hard part. And this is where we get really into the ops.
Yeah.
Is we sit with executive teams, we sit with platform owners, but also we sit with the operators of the organization that has to actually manage the process inside these tools of ERP and eCommerce and CMS and CRM and PIMS, right? Yeah. The employees of the organization are the ones that have to utilize all those tools. So by rolling out that scroll of all of the ways that the CX assessment identifies shortcomings of your e-commerce experience, we walk through a strategic exercise. Okay. And what we do is we rank prioritize all of these items, things that need to get done through 3 lenses.
Yeah.
Value to the business, value to the customer, and most importantly, level of effort. Okay? And Sam, I've been doing these exercises for organizations my entire career, and guess what happens? Every single time I've done them, you get a list that is high value to the business, high value to the customer, and is easy to do. And we look around the room and say, what are we talking about? Let's go start there. Right? At least we can start to generate some momentum. Look, we've got much bigger, larger, complex business issues that we have to figure out. Things like evolving buying behaviors of customers because of COVID for BOPIS and ROPIS, buy online, pick up in store, reserve online, pick up in store. not ready there. You're not ready to get there yet. We don't know how we're going to sync up the POS system and data to that e-commerce experience of customers. That's something we're going to grow into. But in the meantime, let's turn on chat. Let's turn off that PO requirement for guest users. Let's optimize our checkout process. Let's populate our product content. Let's also make sure that we get our data organized in a way that we can read the tea leaves so we can better monetize and better provide experiences for our customers that are tailored to who they are and what their needs should be.
Okay, so do you want to provide an example or a story so that my listeners are able to relate with, which are going to be the requirements that are going to be really hard? I know you provided a little bit of color there that, okay, if you are going with the, let's say, BOPIS or buy online, pick up in store, obviously that's going to be a much harder lift. But typically the problems are not going to be as black and white in my experience when businesses look at their needs. So in most cases, what is going to happen is, especially the companies that don't really have as much digital experience, they are going to have requirements that are not going to be feasible more from a system perspective, that might be very expensive, to be able to implement. So let's say if you engage with any company, they are going to have their wish list, the dreams, they might be looking at their competitors that, okay, my competitors are doing this, and that's why I'm probably losing these deals. So I am looking for 1, 2, 3, 4, 500 line items, and and you are going to look at them and you are going to go, okay, this is probably going to cost $5 million, and there is no way we can do all of this. So now let's start small. The way you said that, let's start small. So give me an example of the engagement where you did this work, where you started small. So describe the business, describe the story, how big it was, what did you choose, and how the result was, so that you can probably build an iterative case study so that the business owner is going to be convinced that, no. I mean, you implemented, let's say, I don't know, maybe $100,000 project. Now I can see some progress. Let's move forward with the next one. Do you have any example?
Yeah, for sure. So maybe let's think about the variety of technologies involved in providing a digital experience to customers, right? Okay. So an example I'll use, an industrial distributor, $250 million industrial distributor, wide array, sells 100 plus brands in their portfolio.
Okay.
By doing this CX assessment, identified a punch list of 70 operational activities that needed to be accomplished. One of those could be turn on BOPIS and ROPIS, right? As an example, because that's an expectation of customers today that a lot of industrial organizations are not capable of providing. That might be one punch list item, but that's going to get kicked down the road because we don't have the capabilities, right?
Exactly.
So by taking that roster of ways that you can improve your customer's experience by prioritizing this. You look at a part number page, right? Yeah. This is an exercise that I've done. Yeah. Think about all of the necessary components for a part number page to be populated and with valuable data to help convert buyers. Product content, tech specs, lead time, price, support materials, chat, right? There's a list of 5 or 6 things off the top of my head. Now, think about what that means if a user's looking at a product page.
Yeah.
I just listed off 3 or 4 or 5 different technologies that all together provide that experience on that one page. ERP's involved for the part number or for the lead time. Your PIM could be involved for all the attributes and tech specs related to that part number.
Yeah.
Your eCommerce tool is used for providing that checkout experience, the add to cart functionality or the quote capability that you're providing customers. Chat is yet another one. So by going through this process, and the organization could, or my organization did not have a functioning PIM. As an example.
Okay.
Chat was not turned on.
Okay.
But they had an e-commerce tool and they had an ERP, and believe it or not, those two technologies spoke to each other.
Interesting.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah.
They were really, really advanced in the integration of 2 foundational business items in the tech stack that could technically provide a phenomenal experience to customers because you're providing meaningful data. However, if they didn't have enough of, so we'll say less than 10% of the catalog was available on the website.
Very interesting.
Think about what happens there. They're getting a lot of traffic going to their store. Customers might know who they are. They might not know who they are. But what they see on that site, that is their definition of who you are and what you sell. And if your products are not on your site, you're missing an opportunity, a really big opportunity. So walking through, and this is how you eat the elephant, right? And these are not easy topics. These are not simple, let's throw some bodies at it and we'll just close it off the list. We have to be able to operationally migrate and modify process, and sometimes it's long-standing operational sequence and process, right? So how do you prioritize all that? I mentioned you go through a strategic exercise for value to the business, value to the customer, and the level of effort associated with it. And here's what we found out. By going through this experience of looking at the assessment and where customer expectations are not being met, we identified that they have the chat capability. The tool is available. It's just not turned on, and it wasn't turned on for a while because they weren't sure how to do everything. But the operational activity that was needed to get a core capability available on this website that customers have said that they wanted was simply getting together with different customer service teams that sat in different areas because they grew through acquisition. Getting all of these 3 different brands coordinated and their team members at customer service coordinated to be able to be available on chat when customers are. That was the operational activity. The technology was there. There were really 2 activities. One was just coordinating a schedule, and the second was doing the training. And guess how long that took? A month.
Oh, wow.
And chat was on. And guess what happens? Negative experiences on their website go down because people now have an opportunity to speak to someone that is easy and in a format that they want and allows them the flexibility to continue doing more research online while they're managing the chat. They're multitasking. Right? So it simply just gives the opportunity to start identifying where's that low-hanging fruit so that you can start to monetize that existing traffic you do have. And guess what happens? If you just give your customers what they want, conversion goes up. When conversion goes up, guess what a natural byproduct is? Revenue. This is simply just improving the experience on your website tailored to humans. And when you do that, the financial outcomes that you seek are a natural byproduct. That's how it works.
Very interesting story, and I really like the way you described, to be honest. But one of the things that I wanted to follow up on is going to be, you mentioned that the e-commerce was talking to ERP, but PIM was not functioning. So let's say if people who are not familiar with, number one, maybe they might know a little bit about PIM, but they might not know what is a functioning PIM versus non-functioning PIM. So what was the problem in this specific case where you felt that the PIM was not functioning?
So let's talk about the reason why a PIM exists, and I'll tell you a little. I'll pull back a curtain a little bit on my career. At one point in my career, I did not have a PIM to use. Budgets just didn't get approved. This is very common in the industrial space. So guess what a lot of organizations do? And at the time, this was a long time ago, but at the time, I knew it wasn't right to do it, but I didn't have a choice. And I put the onus on the e-commerce tool to function as a PIM. And that's not good. That was a hard lesson learned. And if there's any kind of takeaways that I can recommend to your listeners, Sam, is that when you look at the capabilities within your tech stack, the further from the core of what the technology was meant to provide, the shadier the experience can get, because a lot of the software that is out there is often crowdsourced, where they start with a core functionality and then customers start coming in, but I needed to do this. Well, then they expand the offering and then they now have a new service that they offer to a broader market.
Yeah.
And then those customers say, well, now we need to do this.
Yeah.
And what happens, it builds out into this Frankenstein monster that doesn't really work well for a lot of different people.
Yeah.
So when we talk about PIM, we have to make sure that we understand what is the role of a PIM and how does it benefit the organization.
Yeah.
Think about it like a library, right?
Yeah.
If you're a manufacturer that has configured products as well as hundreds of thousands of standard run part numbers,
Yeah.
with a up to, we'll say, 20 to 30 engineering attributes attached to each one of those part numbers, you need a pretty robust capability to make sure that you have an easy way to master your product data, because that's your library.
Yeah.
And what happens is the right kind of PIM allows you to integrate that product content into all of those paid, owned, and earned digital channels we were talking about earlier. That's what a PIM is meant to do. So an organization that may not have a PIM in place, there's obviously more cost-effective free solutions that are out there. Just know that you'll end up paying for it one way or another. Either you buy the license or you end up paying other people to manage and maintain the development of that tool.
Yes.
So when we talk about PIM, it's really important that even if you don't have a PIM, it doesn't mean that you can't do any of this stuff. It doesn't mean that you can't participate in digital commerce.
Yeah.
It just means that the way that you enter into that deep end of the pool, you're going to have some bumps along the way. But that's where you got to start making some hard choices. This is not going to be easy. Yeah. Especially when you're talking about a decades-old commercial model that digital really cuts pretty close to the core of.
All right, amazing. So that's it for today. Do you have any last-minute closing thoughts or remarks for our listeners?
So start with people, right? Digital transformation is not about technology, it's about people. Think about the psychology and the mindset of buyers. Think about internally within yourself. When you're a consumer, what are the things that really frustrate you? Now, think about what that translates and means to engineers that are getting bombarded and brick-walled by very large percentage of industrial websites out there today. Because those expectations of your customers are not being set by you or your competitors. It's being set by those other organizations. When their consumer hats are on. So make sure you're focusing and revolving your strategy around people. When you do right by people, financial outcomes that you seek are a natural byproduct.
Okay, amazing. And my personal takeaway from this conversation is going to be, if you are the industrial company, obviously there are significant opportunities out there in the digital commerce space. So make sure you are at least reviewing what your competitors might be doing and how you might be able to take advantage of those. On that note, Ken, I really want to thank you for your time. This has been a powerful episode.
Thanks, Sam. You take care.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Ken, head over to hatchquantified.com. It's hatchquantified.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. If anything in this podcast resonated with you and your business, you might want to check other related episodes, including the interview with Jeffrey Graham from eCommerce Management, who shares his insights into the classic debate of cart first and content first for e-commerce companies. Also the interview with Brian Back from Enceba, who discusses key trends in B2B e-commerce, including the rise of Amazon's prominence in B2B product research and buying, and why manufacturers and distributors should be paying attention and acting now. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.